I rarely try to use the word I.
Yeah, I will not write with I.
I would say we.
Or
I'm just setting up to YouTube.
the township of Bonfield.
Truly.
Truly use.
Thank you very much.
Wait. She was already here.
Been great, Nick. It's good work.
I don't know why we lost her.
You know, you have a staff person and then oh wait, I've seen her do it worse.
I break the thing for like months.
Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking.
Gina, are you back?
Oh,
can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
There we go.
Every time it's shutting everything down. Okay, I'm good. Are we live streaming now?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, I think we're live streaming now, but we're not recording yet.
Yet. Okay.
I'm gonna. What did you say? Yeah. Can I?
Well, you can go ahead. We have 3 minutes. We'll just up this.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm just saying that I'm still in Ottawa. I'm still at the Capitol.
The beautiful, beautiful spot.
Yeah, beautiful store. So my husband's still here for treatment. So
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know when we'll get back home. So I'm hoping at Christmas, but fingers crossed.
We'll cross our fingers for you too. Yeah.
Thanks.
But at least you still get to attend by Zoom. So Zoom works really well.
It does. It does.
Yeah, that's when it gets real.
That's on.
5:59 according to Apple. We run on Apple.
So anything new in Bonfield? I saw that you had the Santa Claus parade.
This Saturday.
Did you just have that yet?
This coming Saturday.
And our Chilean soup.
This Saturday. Okay.
This Saturday as well. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Sure.
I'm gonna grab a highlighter. Is that okay?
Yeah.
If I can find that.
Yeah.
I think there's one in my container.
Okay, I don't think I can share yet. I gotta go break it out.
Let's see if see if that's
Well, you,
brighter.
I'll get started while you figure that out. So we'll call the meeting to order. Resolution.
Oh, no.
I'll look for mover and a seconder.
I move.
Moved by member Paquette, seconded by member Roblinski, that the meeting be opened at 6 p.m. All in favor? It's carried. Adoption of minutes for regular meeting on October 23rd. I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Paying attention to anybody online want to move? Okay, I'll look internally. Moved by member Paquette, seconded by member Roblinski, that the minutes from the regular committee meeting of October 23rd, 2023 be accepted as presented. All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest?
No.
Seeing none. Presentations from the public, we do not have any. We do not have any consent applications this evening. We are primarily focused on other business, which is to review the draft official plan. So I think what we will maybe do as a committee is come up, we're not going to get through it all tonight, but maybe if we say that we will kind of plow through until 8:30, is that fair? And then is anybody concerned with that amount of time? And you're hoping 6:30 or? Okay, so if it starts getting long in the tooth at 8 and we want to call it a bit early, like just let's have that conversation as we go, but we'll try and get it through till 8:30, get as much as we can.
Can I start with the conference?
Oh, yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. So in September, council received the memo that J.L. Richards did for the prime agricultural report that needed to be done. It was a requirement from OMAFRA, who said that we shall do this study as part of our official plan review. So the memo is back and they're looking for comments on how we feel about what they are presenting back to us. I'll go over it tonight. But this is essentially something that the province is saying that we have to do this exercise. They have identified some prime agriculture. So there's some questions now about how do we feel about that? What's the impact? So I just want to quickly go over it. So they did look at the agricultural plan from doing in here. They used impact data and the it's down here. Impact and another visual exercise, and they lapped those GIS systems on our system to identify the soil content that would class 1, 2, 3 soils are what they deem the province deems as prime agricultural land. So, and there's a definition here of what is predominantly what they call that. So it means specialty crop areas or land. Inventory classes 1, 2, and 3, and we do have some of them in Bonfield. So the next paragraph just talks about the fact that we have to do the study as part of our official plan process. And OMAFRA did say in their one window shop that we had to do it. So they did determine that the township has approximately 5,280 hectares across 332 lots outside of both hamlet areas, Bonfield and Rutherglen. They didn't take into consideration any of that hamlet settlement. And it contains 25% or greater amounts of class 1 to 3, and most of them are class 2 to 3 soils. So the questions, and I'll go through the map, but the questions are, which agricultural lands are not included in the first draft of this boundary, but should be? And then what parcels are included in this first draft that don't make sense to be included? So that means that it's never been used as agricultural. It's not likely to be used as agricultural. There's other primary uses already identified on the property. And then what are the implications of redesignating these parcels for stronger agricultural policies? And the intent of the agricultural of the province saying that we need to identify prime agriculture is that we need to preserve lands for food security and safety. So we need to be considering, because this official plan is 20 to 30 outlook, even though it's reviewed every 10 years. Like our outlook is for years to come in future generations. So they do want us to make sure that the province is making sure we are protecting the land so that there can be farming in the future. So if I go to the soil classes, and I'm just going to go here just for a moment. So these are the areas in the big bold blue that they have identified as prime agriculture. And there's 2 sections up here that are also west of Bonfield. If I go to the legend, the light green is more than 50%, and the purple is 25 to 50, and then the light pink, which is actually wrong on this mapping, so they'll correct the map when we actually submit this into the province. But it is less than 25%. So I think that the bright pink and the light pink got mixed up on the mapping. But you can see the areas in green. The light pink represents a lot of the conservation areas and crown land. And then there are two bright pink up here, which I think are the 25%. They just got those colors mixed up on the legend. So these light green are the 50% or more in here. So this area in here is pretty much farming. We've Ann and I have gone through this in a big picture kind of view, not detailing it down to each lot within this is a field or not.
Like if you're familiar with the township, it's near the Rose Farms. It's within the excuse me, the Fisho Road area, McNutt Road area, where it's already established fields, etc. The Pine Lake area by the Hone Farm. So the light green is indicative of where your farming is already occurring, although the agriculture that they are using it for is to feed their horticultural farms. So it's not like we grow grains, corn, etc.
They're not cash crops. We don't currently have an abundance of cash crops in Bonfield. And that's typically what prime agriculture is. I mean, the good news on this is that it says that we are capable of doing that the soil in Bonfield is good for growing cash crops, but we don't actively have a lot of cash crops right now. And then there's sections down here that are not in the blue bold area. And then if I just go over to the other map, this is the analysis map as well. So mostly using MPAC. This is the MPAC data that they have for who has a farm, who's using it as a farm, who's not using it as a farm. And then we can go through that as well to see what ones make the most sense to keep as prime agricultural land. But in saying that, we can go through to say which ones make the most sense to be in there, those three questions that they ask, what makes sense to be in prime agricultural, what doesn't make sense to be in prime agriculture. We can suggest and we can recommend, but the province is going to have final say. Because the soils are what the soils are. And if they say like this whole area has to be designated as prime agricultural, then they will have to be. But we will do our best to get some of this out. We did talk to the planner today, and perhaps these two areas, as there's not a lot of established farms, that we may be able to remove that with justification that it's not typically been farming to date. But in the areas where there is, this chunk where there is lots of farms that are maybe already there, it might be more difficult.
That's as you run through Maple Road, kind of up through there.
Up here,
Yes.
yeah.
But we have to prove to the province why we deem it not.
Right.
It should not be
Because they
agricultural.
deemed it not a long time ago.
Right.
That's why we deemed it not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now they are actually changing it. So if I go to, I'm trying to go to, I'm not currently working. Page 43. So this is what it means for us to have prime agriculture. That's the rural area. So it starts on page 43, but really 42. So in the agricultural area designation, it's shown on that schedule that I just showed you, those between those two maps. It's designated to protect the agricultural lands to ensure the viability on a long-term basis.
What page again? Sorry.
42.
Oh, right here.
Oh, 40,
I'm sorry.
46. What page am I on? 46. Yeah, okay. So the following permitted uses would be permitted, so such as growing crops, including nurseries, biomass, and horticultural crops, raising of livestock, raising of other animals or food for fiber. We can have agriculture related uses, including farm related commercial industrial uses, limited on-farm diverse uses, including the secondary to the principal agricultural use of the of the property and are limited on the area. On-farm diverse uses include home occupations, home industries, agritourism, and uses that produce value-added agricultural products, ground-mounted solar. And then if we keep going down, I think when we get into what we need to be thinking about is the council shall consider zoning bylaw amendments to establish such uses, provided the proposed on-farm diverse area use is compatible with the surrounding uses, doesn't hinder agricultural uses, provides suitable or buffering between adjacent residential, and would not create adverse impacts to the natural features or water courses which cannot be mitigated. And then there's a number of diverse uses on the farm. So there's farm vacations, bed and breakfast, on farm. And I think the lot area and coverage on the farm shall be in accordance with the provincial guidelines for what they do. So there is, and that goes into the minimum distance separation. So there's a number of policies that come with that kind of restrict the use and on what you can have in the neighboring properties as well. You'd have to look at that. Then the consent policies, where this will probably be where the most impact, because a consent can only happen. The original township lot, which would be the 100-acre parcel, can only be severed for 2 lots. So you're not in that entire area. You would not be able to have. In all the other areas, you can have 3 + 1, so you can have 4 lots. On this one, you can have 2. It's retained. And they have to have a minimum. The non-farm lot shall have a minimum area of 1 acre and a minimum frontage of 60 meters. Or we could do hydrogeology studies to allow something different. And new farm lots shall have a minimum lot size of approximately 40 hectares and a minimum frontage of 100 meters. So there's a bit. Well, no, it's not a bit more restrictive. It's definitely more restrictive in the prime agricultural uses and what you can have and what you can't have versus the rural.
And coming down on Trunk Road where we come out, where we talk about they were designating that prime farm now. There are a lot of severances there. And at this time, and again on Fisher Road, we granted severances out there.
Yep.
And McNutt Road, and that areas where now they've designated it prime farmland. So, and now that we're expected to come here when there's a housing issue, severances and everything, and now it's very restrictive. And that's, I'm feeling that. What's the big change? I guess the fact that not everybody has 28 years on the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my concern now is if we're restricted on these properties that they have severed properties all along, and now no, you can't sever it because it's restricted because it's farmland.
Mm-hmm.
And that part doesn't sit well with me. And that's only my opinion. I'm telling it the way I feel about it.
I think that the municipality has seen a lot of growth in the last little while. Certainly, in the last, there's been a lot of consent. There's a lot more consent files across the desk.
Yeah.
So this will restrict the number of consents that would even be feasible. Even if somebody new buys the property, then you can't sever the property.
No.
Because it goes with the property. So it's the original 100 acres. And you can see in there that there's already lots of severances that have occurred. So we would be restricting development.
We were speaking today that, in light of recent news events, it's kind of a hot topic, right? So it's going to be very difficult to convince the ministry otherwise.
It's going to be hard to, it's going to be very difficult to deal with the people as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that now this is prime farmland and I want to sever my property. I want to give property to my children or whatever. And you can't do it because it's restricted. So it's not only difficult to convince the province. It's going to be difficult to deal with the people as well.
So for
There's
those,
no-
oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
And there's no like, our community is small. There's no maximum or minimum acreage to that they allow you to designate.
That's a fair question.
Like if this is a big chunk of what's in our township, is there any control or anything like that that the government will allow?
No, I asked that question in a different way to our planners today. And they're just gonna look at the soils, and it is what it is. So we have to justify why we want a chunk of that blue out. So
it doesn't matter how much acreage and so what is this percentage for our acreage within the community? How big of a percentage is it again?
I don't know the percentage, but it's like 5,280 hectares, over 332 lots.
We could do the math. We know that the
Yeah.
municipality is 205 square kilometers. Anyways, somebody else. I'm like, okay, it's convert the hectares into,
I need Google for that.
yeah.
I have a comment regarding the boundary. So the blue boundary is what identifies the agricultural lands, right?
The project.
So, right, so, but they're basing it on unfortunately, just the same way as they do, for example, even WMUs for hunting, whatever. It's basically chosen by roads, right? Not by landscape. So you can have a farmland with, fields, cash crop or cattle, whatever, but then his neighbors are in wooded lots and they're not farming, but if they're in that area too, then they're basically restricted to the same policies as agricultural lands, even though that they're not. Like the landscape would tell you a different story. It's not you can't identify it in a grid system like that. You almost need to follow lot by lot in a sense, right? Like.
And that's exactly what we need to do. So we'll have to sit down, go lot by lot and
Yeah.
justify why we think it needs to be removed from prime agriculture. And the reasons when we asked today, how do we justify to the ministry removing something? And it's essentially based on it's never been agriculture before. It's not likely to be agricultural. It doesn't fit with the surrounding area because it's very residential. I even asked if we could just remove it because a lot of it is sand and gravel. Like we have aggregate use, but aggregate has to be rehabilitated to aggregate. Is that right? Aggregate has to be
Rehabilitated up
Thank
to
you.
the point of being agricultural.
And what is that property zone now? Rural residential?
Yeah.
So would that be rezoned then
Yeah.
to farmland?
Yeah.
To farmland?
Yeah, there would be completely different policies. So the white areas would still be rural, but those green, well, the chunks of blue would be prime agriculture.
Now, is this blue outline, is that just basically, that's where we're focusing on and let's piece out all the lots that will fit into agricultural, or are they saying that anything that's within the blue boundary will be deemed agricultural?
Right now, anything within those blue.
Yeah.
And it has to be in blocks. So the ministry will want blocks. See how they're in like the bigger squares? They're going to want chunks of the area into prime agriculture, as opposed to hand picking. See, there's green on the bottom down here. I hope you guys can still see my screen. There's green down here that is still in soil, like class 1, 2, or 3 soil, but they're not in the blue chunk.
How come?
They arbitrarily pick that. Like, I mean, it's basically based on
They
that
just
line.
basically fit a certain percentage that they
Yeah.
require and then just mapped it out.
Well, and there's no set requirement because it's all based on the soil. So
Right.
then they're just looking at the best chunks of, and then going back to the impact data to say this is what the class is on the property. So whether it's farmed or it's not farmed or it's, there's livestock on it. So they're trying to base it based on the soil and the current use and
Mhm.
taking those pieces out. So we'll have to go out and like physically lot by lot by lot to justify taking out a chunk of it.
So once it's rezoned, And someone would make application, or they would attempt to make application, and then we would say no before they even started, right?
Yeah.
And they have no appeal through anybody, because that's our zoning, that's what we've designated, that's what we were told to designate, and that's what it's there, so the people have no,
I don't think it was a recourse. I didn't get that from today's conversation.
No, it's that I
Yeah.
wouldn't think.
It was right to the province.
I think that's
So-
because all of this, Greenbelt, all that stuff that happened down south.
They're
We're
looking
gonna
for more
pay for it
farmland.
up here,
Yeah, they're looking for more farmland, is what they're doing.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we are to preserve it.
It's
And
a,
I
it's
would,
worth a delegation to the minister
okay,
to have this conversation.
Well, there's a lot of soil losses by the Great Lakes, et cetera, from erosion. So we are losing agricultural soils. It's just that we have great soil, so we're kind of on the map on this one.
Mhm.
According to this, we have okay soil.
The light green is like.
The light green is the good soil. I mean, I
Sure,
don't think
so-
anyone believed that Blanco would be an area you could do.
Oh, sure, so
Major
I agree with
agriculture.
probably 3.5 of those grids then.
Yeah.
But the bottom left grid is disproportionately not green.
Mhm.
The one above that disproportionately not green. I mean, the bottom left grid, there's in the bottom left of that grid is
Mhm.
pink. Their neighbor is also pink.
Mhm.
Who could subdivide?
Mhm.
They can't.
Right. but
They
they
can't. That's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Because of. I would actually, can you actually do like a chunk? So if they did the halfway down the bottom right, bottom left one, sorry.
Right.
And like dropped it down below, so leave the people in the middle alone.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, and we can suggest that, absolutely.
yeah,
Mhm.
because then at least like a larger percentage of that property is
actually
prime. Okay, anything else on that before we get into the official plan?
Nope. It's just information, and if anybody knows what to, how to justify taking any of these out, we are happy to hear.
I would almost say that it has to be on a per parcel.
Absolutely. Yeah. You didn't slam it or not. Freeze or make some weird noise.
You could close the.
Maybe there's something in there that wants to come out.
Yeah.
So Nikki, what can we do at this point if, you're saying we have no options because we have to try and prove with what we have there.
Mhm.
And I know that at the time that they said everybody brought a lot of farms in, not severances like we have now. And people were not very happy that all these beautiful farms they had, and it was designated no farmland, no prime farmland.
Mhm.
And now here we are back, like,
Yeah,
So I think that Anna and I will go through this line, like parcel by parcel, section by section, and see what we can, how we can justify, if we can come up with justifications for removing them from the prime agriculture. And then another thing that I think will be very prudent for us to do, when we do have our statutory public meeting, we should send letters to those who we have not been able to justify, to make sure that they attend the official plan meeting, so they understand that they're being redesignated and the restrictions that are gonna be put on their land.
and if they choose to communicate with the province,
Yes.
their displeasure to that.
Yes. And
Uh,
it'll be JL Richard said at the statutory meeting explaining. So, it's like, it's not just us, like, this is the ministry who's making us do this.
And JL Richards are the one that drew the map, or
Yes.
drew the
Right.
lines of it.
Yeah, so they can better understand the science behind that.
Sure, okay.
Mhm.
All right, well, so we'll transition to, we're gonna do a walkthrough of our draft official plan. We're gonna go page by page and I just ask the staff and the committee members as we kind of go through the page, if you have notes that you've made that you wanted to discuss or questions you want to ask, let's just we'll jump in. But for a matter of context, obviously the background information, this is a 25-year planning horizon document that will take us through till 2048. There are intervals within that, the time frame being first 10 years and then 5 years after that it can be revisited. But really this is that guiding principle document as we go forward. For viewing pleasure, obviously, for context, the township was established in 1886 and the town of Bonfield was established in 1906. They amalgamated in 1975, so Rutherglen and Bonfield became the corporation of the Township of Bonfield, which comprises of 205 square kilometers. And this document will also provide the opportunity to measure the impact of future developments, environmental and economic impacts as well. So shifting on to page 6, I think this is where I'll stop. Obviously, it starts to go through the province as a provincial policy statement that is kind of highlighted here. Obviously, one of the changes that we're focused on was in K, the inclusion of affordable housing as a focus of trying to bring housing into the municipality. Any questions on page 6? Page 7, mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions, adaptation to changing climate. So,
Can we, sorry,
yeah,
can we just move up a bit? It wasn't on the screen because I'm just kind of following the screen because it's easier than me following.
sure.
Okay, number S, I didn't understand promotion of built form that. Can somebody give me an example? It says promotion of built form that.
So
I could probably.
Yeah, go,
answer
yeah.
that because I work in the architectural discipline. I think basically what it means is that you're not constructing something that is an eyesore, and that basically doesn't meet the landscape, so they're basically asking for an adequate building that's appropriate to the landscape. Obviously, further in the document, it would also state like energy efficiency and things like that, but yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering, I'm not understanding it. I'm just wondering if if it could be worded differently, or is that kind of the logo for that?
I would check with the PP, the provincial policy statement, but it's probably a section in there, so it's the same wording.
Okay,
I'm making it up.
Yeah. Page number 8 talks about the basis of the plan. Then we get into the Northern Growth Plan, which is a provincial document, and some of the statements it makes. So this is all just kind of providing context before we get into the meat of our document. North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority and the role that they play within our developments and watershed. Page 11, vision, principles, and objectives. For the guiding principles and objectives, principle 1, sustainable development, principle 2, natural environment and resources. Principle 3, affordable housing. Principle 4, diversified economy. Principle 5, community and Aboriginal environment. Good so far, okay.
What page do you want?
Just went to 14, but I don't know that your page numbers are actually aligning better.
No.
No, actually, I don't think they were last.
Okay,
So we are on number 3, general development policies.
okay.
Yeah. The following policies by that we have 2 settlement areas within the township known as Bonfield and Rutherglen. that the boundaries are established within schedules attached to your seal. Yeah, do your thing. Ed.
Well, today we were looking at the official plan. Like, we're encouraging development within our hamlet areas. But our hamlet areas don't have any property to develop them. So why does the hamlet have to stay the same size? Is the hamlet allowed to be a little bit bigger to incorporate larger parcels of property?
Sure. Or do we have to even get to the point where we're pushing development into the hamlet? Can we not actually just, if development is good anywhere within the township as long as it complies with the principle of the document?
Mhm. So the document really does kind of center things around a hamlet. Because the province discourages sprawling and creating clusters outside of a hamlet. So expanding the hamlet might be an option, I think, that we could explore with Dale Richards, just to see what those benefits are going to be. But it'll come down to other policies that are in here as well. But it may certainly help when we get down to the zoning. So in a hamlet, the zoning is far more residential and commercial based as opposed to the rural uses. So if we take some from the rural and we put it into, again, it's going to depend on what we can remove from the prime agricultural land, but
Right.
yes, if we get to remove it.
Well, it's interesting
But it's
that they, sorry, go ahead, did you have something?
I was just gonna say, actually, would this be a time where basically gonna revisit the boundaries of the hamlet? And expand them to basically, add more land that could be part of the hamlet.
So I think as staff, I think that's what we're asking, is if the committee has that appetite for us to bring the discussion up with J.L. Richards. I don't know if that discussion happened in the past, or if there's been any of those discussions with the planners throughout the review on expanding the hamlet areas. Because this is the time to do it. The official plan is when it can be done, just to.
What do you think, Mary? You've been on it for 28 years.
I don't know how you make it, how you change the boundaries when I think of both hamlets. How do you change the boundaries to bigger? It would include the existing development, right?
Yes.
Yes.
But then there's a lot of property that the township has that are large and could be severed possibly in the future. If the expansion was like a half a kilometer.
Like going to line 3,
Right,
right?
Yeah.
right.
Like in Rutherglen, if we, again, not knowing what we're taking out of prime agriculture, but if the hamlet went down like to where the fire hall was. Cause that opens up more land that can be severed and created for more lots, but still keeps it within a very urban-ish setting for what urban could be for Buffalo.
What's pink up above?
Class 2, I believe.
Yeah, so it's not as good as the green, right?
Right.
That's much there.
And
Oh,
if that highway goes through, that's just on the other side of the railway tracks. Is they're putting that through.
So it
I'm
splits
not
the
sure.
Rutherglen hamlet.
It would be interesting to see if there's an appetite from the committee, but even if what Gerald Richards would come back with, because you're right, if it's restricted, because the other piece of it is, I was trying to find it, but there's a word for they don't, not string development, what's the name of the,
Spalling.
there's something, basically they don't want just a street of
Row housing
row housing, right?
Right.
What's that, whatever that's called. So, but if you look at, we need housing and we have no land, kind of restricts the,
Right,
You've got
Okay.
parkland that belongs to the township, 49 acres, right? Next to that, you have a cemetery, and that's one thing that has to be protected forever and ever and ever. And I don't know what you see is what you get, that's what's in Rutherglen and what's in
Yeah.
Lockfield too, in residential, the few stores, the store that we do have, there's 2 stores there in Rutherglen.
It's whether or not, like you look at the Hamlet of Bonfield, is that line 3 which goes right up to the blue line? What
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
like
like.
there's a whole chunk that if we made that even half of that Hamlet,
Mhm.
right? Like
Right.
where
And
the
this
light
is-
is.
This is already very developed in here as well, so it could be.
Captured, right?
And understanding that I don't know
Let's go.
what the justification would be for us in the official plan, because they're going to, the ministry is gonna look, why do you wanna expand? We're not bursting at the seams in demand. I mean, this is set up so that we can. It's in the background report, I forget it, it's on the top of my head, but how many new, what's our I think our population growth is only expected to be 100 people,
Yeah, it was ridiculously
It's
low,
ridiculously low. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we
because it's
can,
not reality.
we
I think our growth
can
is-
justify moving the hamlet. In that we're not bursting at the seams yet, like 100 people is not very much compared to the percentage of our population. But if we made justification to say that we do expect to grow and we need to have this larger area.
How about the fact that they're asking us to do a 25-year document?
Yeah.
So we're planning for future growth. You only need to look at East Ferris and their growth rate. That's gonna be us.
Look at us, like we're still doing
Yeah, yeah.
50 permits, not all single family dwellings, but we're still doing 50 some permits a year. Other municipalities have scaled back drastically. So we're still, like, we do have evidence to say that we are still growing.
A lot of moving out.
Yeah.
A lot of moving out in the Boxwell area, Gay Road, all out in that area is where the new development is going.
Mhm.
Mainly because everybody owns the land right
Yeah.
in the main part of Rutherglen or Bonfield.
Yeah.
Pine Lake, I think out in that area too, there's homes going up in there. Maple Road,
Yes, Maple Road,
lots of
big time.
development there.
Right, but they're also getting smaller and smaller, you know what I mean? Like there's more people moving in, but the lots are getting severed, so there is no availability to continually sever. And I know that, council has often spoken with desire for economic development. How do we make our core better, et cetera, but there's really no opportunity for any commercial development within our hamlet. Because it's so residential. And there's no property to be had.
And that's one thing that our consultants referred to was the designating area for commercial development, right? And I don't know where it's all good when you talk about it, but when you look at it, where are we going to get that from? Where are we going to get the land from? How are we going to do that? Our plan has to fit what we have. And I don't know how we would put more commercial in our hamlet, in either one of our hamlets. I don't know. We have very fortunately, we have the seniors housing.
Mhm.
That's a development there, which is good for Bonfield. But can't manufacture land. You're gonna have
No.
to put it in layers.
No, but I think if you look at the map that you had up,
Yeah.
somewhere between here and line 3. Can be another development, like you can almost envision a subdivision being built somewhere in there, right? So if that was considered part of the hamlet. It makes that.
Remember,
development
that's where the road is coming to, eh? Going down Trunk Road in that area,
Right,
coming out the highway. Highway 17.
yeah, so obviously we'd have to avoid that, but.
Is there anything in the plan that allows the boundaries of these hamlets to be changed, or do you have to wait till a 10-year review?
10 or 5-year review, yeah, so after this, nothing for 10 years, after that, nothing for 2 more, like a 5-year period and then 5-year period.
Would it be considered to maybe write it into there and say that, at any given time in between that period, the municipality reserves the right to alter the boundaries
Yeah.
of these hamlets?
Yeah.
And that way you leave it open, and if there's an investment coming in, you say, well, we'll make it easier for you to shift the boundary.
Absolutely, as long as it's documented in here,
Yeah.
it gives us the ability to make changes later if we need to, right?
I made that note, so we can talk to the companies.
Okay, well, that's good discussion.
Where are we going now?
Well, we're still in general development policies. So settlement areas, land use, accountability. I don't have any notes on what is my page 15, but your page, whatever it is, yeah, that one.
Notes.
Anybody have any notes to discuss on those ones?
No.
Storage. Buffering, no real change there from our previous. We see the addition of noise, vibration, and odor. That's 3.2.2, so development should be located and designated to avoid adverse impacts related to noise, vibration, odors, and other emissions on existing adjacent sensitive uses. Similar area protected them. So I would imagine this is put in there as a result of kind of some of the conversations our community's been having about a racetrack development that happened. That would guide this, this document would guide where that could happen.
It's also other industries for like aggregate uses or.
Right.
So industrial uses as a whole. So I had a comment on number 3, because they were saying there's no sensitive land use shall be permitted within the actual potential influence area of industrial uses, which would be aggregate. And then saying class 1 is 70 meters, class 2 is 300 meters, or class 3 is 1,000 meters. So I'm not sure that those could be met. Again, I know it says that without evidence to substantiate that the absence of the land use compatibility problem. But if we are like 1,000 meters from 100-acre pit is an enormous area where we're going to, how do you restrict when, of course, they're going to make noise. And of course, they're going to disturb stuff if they do a blast, like, so.
We have 2 pits within throwing distance of our hamlets. Yeah.
So I have a note just to ask the planners about that, because I'm not sure. I don't know if this is a ministry regulation that's gonna say that, no, this is how it's supposed to be, but if 1,000 meters seems.
Yeah.
So we start doing the math on that, and that's a radius.
Especially if some of them would be in what we might be looking to expand hamlet into.
Yeah.
So that would restrict that.
Yes. So I just have a note on that one.
Ribbon development, that's the word I was looking for earlier.
Yes, it is.
Well, you didn't help me out. I'm like, string development, that doesn't sound right. Ribbon development. Yeah. Okay, anything else on noise, vibration, and odor? Infill developments? What's that?
That's where you got the ribbon development.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
But just to comment on that.
Yeah.
Infill development is discouraged, right?
Mhm.
No,
Well,
but it's
they-
encouraged.
Pardon?
The infill development would be. Infilling would be encouraged, because that's like you have two homes that are close in a lot in between, you want to infill, and you want to build up the built up area already.
Yeah.
But not the ribbon, right?
Not ribbon, because, but infill development would, I think would be strongly encouraged, because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not cleaning off for school buses, don't clean off for roads, nothing. Just put another house in there.
And I remember seeing somewhere in here, did ribbon development get a bit more defined? Because I have a mental picture in my head of ribbon development, but it's just. Like it looks like a street to me. So. Nobody's got an answer. Moving on.
Nope, we don't have an answer. for you on that.
It would be good to get some definition around that though, just
Yeah, there's a
because,
lack of.
yeah, just because it is kind of throughout the document talking about ribbon. Developments. Sign provisions that we can now enact a sign bylaw. We get a really big McDonald's and want to put a really big sign, we can say no. We probably wouldn't. Non-conforming uses. Water courses and, oh, yeah,
I just have a question, this is, out of curiosity more than anything else. So the sign provisions, that's for like, for example, like road, I have a sign on the road there. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay,
could be, yeah,
or like the pharmacy, Bonfield Pharmacy sign, or,
Yeah.
so so the township regulates,
we can,
the location of those signs?
we absolutely can.
Well, sometimes it's, it'll block the view of traffic.
Right.
So if the sign's not in the right place and you look right, you can't see up the road.
Yeah, I'm just
The
more curious
size,
more than
the
anything
height,
else.
the-
So they pay, who, does the township get money for that then?
not
No,
currently.
the
You mean the
ministry
billboard?
gets-
Oh, the ministry of,
The ministry gets the money for those signs.
On the highway,
the highway,
yes.
okay.
Highway?
Yeah, because we paid for the agricultural sign and we gave it up to Jerry Gagne, but we had to pay for that every year.
Yeah, the township actually currently pays for the two signs we do have for both the township on the border.
But we don't regulate those signs, those are 100% regulated by MTO, but we can regulate any
The
sign
turbo
that's
sign.
within the
Yeah.
municipal.
Jurisdiction.
Including the,
For sale signs on the house.
yeah, or private, sure, business signs and do we make money off of it? No, we could put a user fee in there, or an application fee, but. I don't know that we necessarily would kind of restrict it.
Someone has to go look at it. To see if it's okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we're getting that many businesses trying to put up signs, we'll address the issue right then, yeah. So water courses and lakeshore developments. No issues, there's no real things,
May I speak again?
open forum, please do.
Sorry. Like I find that we have to be diligent about our lakeshore development and what we sell. Because we end up in a position sometimes that we have no parking. Because we've gotten rid of our lakeshore properties. So for instance, in Talon Lake, we have no ability to increase any parking down there. Because we've sold off of our shoreline allowances. So we don't have the ability to make it better.
Where for parking do you mean?
Like
Right.
at Talon Lake. We have nowhere to make it a bigger parking lot because we've sold the shore. The shore allowance.
Yeah, but I don't know where you mean, for the parking. What area
Talon Lake at the end of Talon Lake Road where
are you
there's,
talking? Oh, for the, boat launch.
yes. So sometimes we have to be diligent about how we sell those properties because sometimes we. End up not having what we need for when that happens.
Like over on Shields Point Road and down in that area where there were lots that were
Right,
sold off. And there were blocks put in there so that those blocks were for everybody to share. Then they would have access to it.
Mhm. And that's the thing in here that are, like, you have to protect public access to water, right? So.
There is public access on Shield Point?
Down, you know, where when you go down Shields Point Road and there's that house that sits back in there is Lynn Phillips. And down in that area there, unless they've changed it, right when you go into you go on Shields Point Road and there's that beautiful home that sits kind of off, there's a driveway into it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you say that because I met one of the gentlemen and he's selling that. I think he just sold, John? And
John Whitnell,
I'm not sure his last name, but
yeah,
I was told that basically that green space, because I walked over there and talked to him. There's that green space is grandfathered in because whoever sold severed 4 lots had said that they're gonna remain grandfathered in to have private access to the lake. So all 4 lots across the street that's their water frontage, I was told.
So that gives them access to the
Yeah.
lake, right?
Yeah, but I
Not
wasn't,
public.
No,
Only.
it's public access.
no public access, no.
No, I was
No.
surprised about that when they sold that house.
Yeah.
Because it was my understanding that there were lots there that there would be a block for public access. And I don't know what transpired,
Marcel,
but I know there's a portion of that property that belongs to Lynn Phillips as well. And she's right on that, she's right on the lake,
yeah,
so.
Michelle told me that.
No, that's been private access. I've been over there for 40 years. And that's always been a part of those 4 deeded lots.
Yeah.
So no, so the public couldn't go down on there?
It's deeded.
Yeah,
No, it's even I'd be trespassing, launching my boat or anything. That's private property.
yeah, and when you say that, I am surprised, because I thought at the time that there was a block that would give public access there. And when the people that sold to John Whitnell, and I found out that John Whitnell said he owned down there, I was really surprised that that area went to
Yeah,
individuals.
no, it was always under my understanding too. Mhm.
Okay, anything through 4, 5, 6?
There was one 3 point, there was just something where adjacent uses of structures encroach 3.6. Where is it?
No,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think they're just maybe 3.63 where adjacent uses.
Yeah, of structures encroach upon,
3. The number is a little loud.
Yeah, it was,
yeah. It says encroach upon a township owned Lakeshore Road allowance. The township may require the proponent of such uses. So I wasn't quite clear on that they may require a person, but how do you decide like that everybody would be treated equally in that comment? That, the township may require the proponent of such uses or structure to enter into an encroachment agreement with the township for the use of such land. So I'm just wondering, like, how would that be determined in order to, that you're not having one person with the same scenario, that person has to enter into one and not the neighbor 4 doors down with a similar encroachment.
Is your suggestion to remove the word may and change it with shall?
Well, no, I'm not saying that either. It's just,
Like a
So-
measurement.
I would think that.
I don't know how it got in there, so I'm just asking.
Well, probably because we do have a number of encroachments that are not documented or agreed upon, and of course, it always comes down to risk management when there's things on the road shore allowances. I would say if we go to shall, there has to be an understanding that we're not going to be able to get to every encroachment within like a year, because we're not going to know them all within a year. If it's a may, then there should be an encroachment policy. So it would set out the criteria for if it's this, and this, but I'm not sure how you would say that someone can have the crib of their dock or a dock on the road shore allowance and not have to have a license or an encroachment agreement, but someone might put up their shed, right? So I don't know that we want to put different criteria as opposed to if somebody's using the lakeshore allowance, then there should be a license or an encroachment agreement. Encroachment.
Yeah, and it depends on
Yeah.
when it went, like there's a lot of old, even before the time of the license agreement,
Yeah.
which
And
I think was in the 70s.
I was just gonna say, I think we can, on ones that we know where there's new buildings or you could do shore road allowance licenses, which we do have that process in place.
Yeah.
And then for those that are
Yeah.
building code or pre-official plan and zoning, you could do encroachment agreements. Like you can have encroachment agreements just on road allowance as well, because somebody lives beside an open road allowance, but they've built a shed on the road allowance or 3 feet into the road allowance. You can do an
Yep.
encroachment agreement for that. That's typically when an encroachment gets used, is when there's something in the structure on the allowance.
Or when they become aware.
Both.
I'm fine with the word may. I was just wondering where,
Well, it brings up a good topic though, so maybe after this, then we're gonna need an encroachment policy.
You're saying, not necessarily.
do we already have one?
No, we don't have one. Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but it, doesn't the license agreement, isn't that exactly what it is?
I have to look at what the license agreement has in it and compare it to an encroachment.
Yeah, well, I think the license agreement kind of covered all those kinds of things that people had, well, unless it was a part of their garage or something.
So you're saying
Right.
license the property as opposed to purchasing it? Is that what you're saying?
No, there's
Yeah,
still,
because that's what the purpose of the license agreement was originally. So that people could have a dock or a bunkie, they could just get a license agreement.
instead of having to purchase the shore allowance. Because purchasing is an option.
Yeah, that's okay.
Purchasing is an option, but we've always had the license agreement
Mhm.
because then you, oh my goodness, you're going into a real can of worms with, because there's so many people with bunkies and docks and things that have been built for many, many, many years.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be a showstopper, it's whether or not we actually wanna put an effort into documenting it all properly through the licensing system, right? Which is
Mhm.
always strive for, but you know, human resources is
Yeah, no, I'm fine with me.
yeah. Okay. Mhm. Okay, moving on, our page 20, Nikki's page, not sure.
We'll be back to normal.
Yeah, page 20, yeah, township buffer working neighboring townships, sure. Development capacity of Lake Nosbonsing.
There's a stop sentence there, but I've made a note of
Whether or not.
it.
So. I mean, number 11, which is township of Bluntville, will work with the neighboring townships. To determine the development capacity of Lake Nosbonsing and other water bodies. So speaks to a couple of things for me. One, you know, the properties that we have on Lake Nosbonsing that is sitting with a trailer on it. That if we are successful in the challenges to our bylaw and we are asking people to remove their trailer. The encouragement would be to actually develop their property. Right, so to say that we have to work with the neighboring townships. Do we know of a capacity limit that's
Well,
for every designated lot on the water now?
isn't Town Lake already similar to that?
Town Lake is at capacity.
Right,
Yeah.
so we had to work. To understand that capacity, Calvin Township is on Talon Lake as well as our own.
So, but is there undeveloped lots on Talon?
I can't answer that.
I don't know what that means.
Right, so my
Would
point
be
would be,
unexclusive.
right, like there are absolutely undeveloped lots on Nosbonsing that why create a lot if you can't develop on it.
Right.
Right, so.
So you're saying if we made them remove the trailer, the other township has to work with us for development?
Well, hopefully. That the lake itself wouldn't be at a capacity level that somebody removes their trailer, we go to
Yeah,
try and have that property developed. And the lake can't sustain that development, that, you know,
Mhm.
it would be really unfortunate if. East Ferris had developed so much on the lake that all of a sudden we now can't on the property that's next door, so. It's just an open-ended statement that I don't know really what it means, and we gotta work with them.
Like-
I think it'd be interesting to see where we are at capacity on the lake, if we did talk to our neighbors.
Mhm.
But you bring up a valid point that, it will only be so much time before it is at capacity. So we need to make sure that we're making the policies and the bylaws that will allow us the best growth in the township.
Yeah, so where it would make sense to me is if we had an agreement with the other municipalities, to say the existing lots as they sit now cannot be severed further to create more development on the lakes. Fair enough. What you got is what you got. And if it's an undeveloped piece of property and somebody decides to develop it, that's fair.
That's basically what we have right now in Pybuscon Bay, right? As far as I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in here as well. I seen that.
Oh, good.
Basically, it's at capacity and there are undeveloped lots. And I think I spoke to, at the previous planning, Sabrina, yeah, she explained it to me basically saying that, because I fell into that, I was on there and we developed a lot, but we also have a consent, but we didn't create a new lot, we basically just revised the existing lot. So
Right.
we fit into that, so even though we were at capacity, it still allowed me to build because that lot is kind of like a placeholder,
Yes,
right, so.
that's what I,
But you can't separate further, you're right, so that, yeah, I see where you're going with that.
yeah, as long as that's what that means, I'm all in, that's great.
And you're on Talon, right?
Yes,
I understood that from Sabrina as well, that if you already had an existing lot that was undeveloped, you'd still be able to build,
Yeah, so I guess the question for Nazma.
even though they were saying the lake's at capacity.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think-
even on Talon.
Yeah, so I think the question for Nosbunsing is I'll just pick a random number, 302 lots around Nosbunsing. Does it have the capacity of 500 lots? Which means that you can subdivide or sever however many lots. And that's where we would have to hopefully work with East Ferris to not exceed that.
So do you wanna say something, Eric?
Yeah, I said, well, if they develop with the proper resident, you have a proper system.
Eric, I'm not sure if anybody else put that up, but you're cutting out really bad. I wonder if you turn your camera off, if your Wi-Fi stream would be a little better, and maybe try that statement again.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit better, yeah.
No?
Yeah,
Well, at least if they develop it with a proper house, they would have a proper septic system, which in the long run would be better for the lake. That's
oh,
my
absolutely.
view is.
Yeah, 100%.
I wanna actually ask another clarification on that, because, so. When that at capacity statement and having an empty lot as a placeholder and the person develops with the septic and everything and meets all those requirements, but there's also other zoning bylaws that, it's a rural zoning, which also now is gonna allow for additional dwelling units, up to 2, I believe, get that later, but, so does that mean that at capacity eliminates that,
Good question.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, where does it stop?
right. Can you build 3 on one lot?
Right,
if you're at
obviously,
capacity?
with the details, obviously, if the lot doesn't permit 3 septic beds, well, then you're obviously not gonna have 3, but
Right.
if it does permit it, then, because some of these lots are big.
Yeah. Great question. You should raise that with the Jail Richardsman here next.
I'm thinking on that one.
No, it makes capacity.
Cause you have,
Because capacity is, it cannot sustain any more development. Other than those lots that are on there.
yeah,
And- But in the RLS, if you had more in one house.
the way I understand capacity is actually not per dwelling unit, it's not saying that there's no room to build. Structures, it's actually, there's no room to absorb the septic. Because you have to have, first of all, you know, your minimum areas clearance is 300 meters, whatever, to water bodies and all that. And so if you have septic beside septic beside septic, then you're basically just. I don't know what that looks like, right?
Saturated in the land, septic.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a good question. That would not have said. Mary, do you have an answer to that question?
No,
Okay, fair enough, we're moving on. Minimum distance separation. No changes made there, I don't know if anybody has any. Utilities and communications. Home occupations and home industries.
Did you get?
My
3.7, private
23,
services?
23, 3.10, did I skip?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I skipped a page. I'll get through this, yeah, we're at private services, 3.7, sorry about that. Minimum lot area requirements is determined by the respective land use designation, that's. Fair addition, I think, unless anybody has any concerns. Trans-Canada pipeline. Okay. Repeat minimum distance separation.
Nope, 3.9, more than one use per lot.
Oh, thank you.
Why we underline that?
Yeah,
So I highlighted that section and I'll get to it for you on the screen. So in this section, I highlighted that no more than one primary residential, and I just want them to define what the primary is going to be, because later on it does say second unit. Well, it says additional residential uses that are going to be provided, but no longer granny suite. So there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen around, like, why are we identifying primary as and then additional? So just to highlight, we need more explanation on that section.
yeah, what's it based on?
I think once again, like, because there's not a lot of definitions listed,
Yeah,
so we're questioning like the
the
terminology,
interpretation.
right?
Because it really comes down to interpretation when we go to implement the action. To the plan is, you can interpret it to be one way, I can interpret it. So the clearer we make it at this point, the better.
Right, like, is it based on land ownership? And can a secondary be bigger than a primary?
Right.
Right, so maybe that's like, if we scope it that way.
Mhm.
Anything else on that?
Maybe one more, because, sorry.
That's okay.
So it does say that shall have, no building lot shall have no more than one primary residential structure, which isn't dwelling, because you can have some detached or let's say the word duplex. You can have either one of those. And then later on, we talk, and I guess this is a question from me to the committee on how do we define this? But for that, and it'll come up later, ancillary structure, because in here it's saying no more than one residential structure. And then later it says that you can have other structures. So like, how do we feel about apartments over garages and bunkies, and how do we feel about that stuff? But we can get into it as we get to that section where it highlights a little bit more, but. Yeah, I think there's just a lot more that needs to be discussed on 3.9. In conjunction with
Uniforms
that.
over garages, it's an
That's the
interesting.
man cave right there.
Frogs, that's what they call them in the States.
What do they call them?
Frogs finished them over garage.
Really?
Okay, so minimum distance separation, utilities and communications, home occupations and home industries.
3.11
Yeah,
for utilities and communication. Point number 2. In here, and this is just a question I know that's gonna come to the planner. I don't know how much the committee is necessarily gonna, but it says local zoning bylaws cannot prevent a telecommunication tower from being constructed since the federal government, blah, blah, blah. And I wondered if we also needed to include wind, because wind turbines are now under the provincial program. They used to be under municipal, and then they took them back because of not in my backyard. So do we also need to say something in there about telecommunications and wind?
sure.
Just to send that message that we don't really have control over.
They're blenders.
Nor do we want it.
What number now?
We are moving on to 3.12, but on the second part of that.
So on that window, I don't know if if any of you were part of that group that for wind power, when they were going to do it up on the escarpment, it wasn't in the township of Bonfield, it was across on the other side of Talon. Wouldn't we as a township have concerns if they were going to put a wind operation in our township?
If we did, we could have a lobbying effort, of course, with the provincial government at that time, write letters to the minister, delegations, support the various groups that are doing it. It would be kind of case by case for sure. But yeah, we wouldn't have the ultimate say of a yay or a nay there. We would just be one voice.
So somewhat, so what you're saying is that the township has no say in it, and it's only the federal government
Provincial for wind.
is provincial. So the township has no authority or.
No authority, hopefully a little bit of influence if we could, but that's where it stops.
Okay, I didn't realize that it's all lies with the provincial.
They pretend to work with us, however, just saying, like when we do Bell Canada infrastructure. But it is mandated, like we only have a window of like 15 days to answer to any permitting with hydro, with Bell Canada. It's very stringent on how the law has been written through the province.
And the province did have the Green Energy Act. I think that's what gave municipalities some authority in wind. And then there was so much pushback on the wind that the province wanted to do renewable resources. So they said, okay, municipalities, you can. When the feedback came and municipalities were saying no, then the province took that privilege away from municipalities. So it's really back to the province, as far as I understand, that they are the ones, you make the application and we're a voice among many.
Okay. Anything before mobile homes?
I have something under 3.12.
Okay, I was just wondering if wind fitted in with two, together.
Yeah. Good catch.
Okay, so 3.12, you had something?
For home occupations and home industries, just because this has come up and it says that single detached dwellings may be used in part for professional services. But what about units? So apartments. So this is just saying if you own a home, you can have a business, but what if you're renting an apartment and you want to use the second bedroom? Are we opposed to that?
Well, I guess the question would be, would the neighbors be opposed to that? Because it's gonna depend on what the business is,
It's gonna
right?
be traffic, it's gonna, yeah.
Right, so.
I'm just posing the question.
And
Yeah.
what would you use it for?
Well, a home occupation would be something like a cabin service, maybe a hairdressing service.
Seamstress,
Yeah, any of those.
Because during COVID, everybody worked at home,
exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Well, if they'd have been up the creek, if they would have said, no, we couldn't use it.
So can we scope it in like parking ability and
Yeah.
like, yeah, if we kind of did it in that, like as long as the building is capacity for the anticipated traffic of that busy business.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, the owner of the apartment building would have to consent as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I could support that because I think there are people that have to work at home, whether they rent it or not, to exist,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to,
Yeah, and the more we can encourage businesses to not just be side hustles and actually become legit businesses is great, so.
if they start as a home occupation and can grow their clientele so that they're actually a storefront eventually, that's exactly what we want.
Like further into that I wrote like, because we have jurisdiction over the entrance into the facility, so it would be our determination as well to ensure that there's ingress for the parking lot would capacitate the building,
Mhm.
so it kind of
Yeah, we
goes
have
full circle.
some ability to control. But yeah, it's stated clearly in there. Mobile homes?
No, sorry. Back number 5. On it, and I guess I should move it down here for you guys too. Sorry. So number 5 is recreation area. This is still under home occupation. And they're saying they may be used in part for professional offices, home occupations and small scale maintenance. So I'm not sure what the definition of small scale maintenance might be. I get maintenance might be sewing canvas or doing something else, but it could also be like a motor vehicle. So I don't think we want to have motor vehicles in recreational area. It's typically around the water. There's not a lot of buffer in there. So I'm just looking to define that a little bit more.
Can you define recreational area?
Maybe they mean snowmobile.
Recreational areas, and they're kind of in. I don't have them in the current one. But they'd be more like the RLSs, so the cottages around the lake.
Again, we need a definition.
Yeah. And they probably, I think recreational areas are defined later on. And they're been uses and stuff, but I just wanted to define what that's, or remove the small scale maintenance, so it's just that it's a service that you can, not a motor vehicle service, not a small engine service.
Which would still be a service, still.
Could a small scale maintenance be a little property management firm?
It could be. And then,
That provides services to the cottages in the area?
And what happens if it is a guy who's pretty good with outboards and gets a 2.2 outboard dropped off for a little bit of work on his dock, right?
Yeah.
So I hear where you're going for sure. We gotta try and scope it. I mean.
Yeah.
Hopefully J.L. Richards will have some ideas how to
Yeah.
scope that.
I think there's a question for J.L. Richards.
Mhm,
They have more experience with it.
absolutely.
Or
Sorry, Janet, do you have something?
like no car repair service or
Mhm.
garage.
Yeah.
Right.
Or garage repair.
Okay, so mobile homes? Nikki?
Yeah,
Okay, we can move on. All right,
no,
so.
I have
Oh.
something.
No, so do I. I was going small. I tried to go to mobile homes like 3 times.
3
but-
times, I
Yeah.
keep interrupting. Why don't you go if you have something for mobile homes?
Doesn't, he just wants to go to mobile homes.
Well, I guess the definition of a mobile home. So like,
Yeah.
I've seen mobile homes be. Oh gosh, many different things I would say over time, so. Does it have to have wheels? No wheels, undercarriage? Does it have like elevator off the ground? On blocks, like. That's just one of the definition around that, especially as we're gonna be, figuring out. RVs and all of that as well, right?
And it may be defined under the RV bylaw. So I did have that it's defined, like to define a mobile home. But then in number 2 where it says human habitation is not permitted. But people do use mobile homes that are on wheels.
Modular, we were calling them.
Yeah, I mean, but without the definition, and they actually have the word trailers, they actually do use trailers for when their guests come to visit.
Right.
And the RV bylaw does allow to use the trailer for that, so that would be in contradiction to our other bylaws.
And if they take an RV and they put it on blocks and they take the wheels off.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be careful that we're not creating that as a.
They,
I
like,
believe
I
that's
thought
all
that would be-
defined in the zoning bylaw.
Sorry, Eric?
I think it's in the zoning bylaw, specific definitions for that.
I just think that one section contradicts that.
Yeah.
That section, so it's just a highlight that we need to look at it.
Did you have something else under that?
No.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a question. What
For,
is the
for
topic?
mobile, for mobile homes,
Go ahead.
is there a reason, like, when I think of a mobile home, I think of, like in other areas, like a double wide unit located on a permanent foundation in accordance with the building code and everything.
Yeah,
But in our township, is this where you're not going to allow that type of mobile home? That's what I'm getting from that segment there.
yeah, and that's,
Is that correct? You don't want,
well, I think that's where I want the definition before we can really make a determination, right? I mean, if it's sitting. Like, it probably won't be on a proper foundation, I think that's the whole point, but they end up being on blocks or they're on whatever is under them.
So what's
Yeah, but
defined in
skirt,
the
right?
municipal act? Cause it says it's defined in the
I
municipal
think
act.
Gina nailed it when she basically defined in the OBC, right? That's what you can go on, but again, Jason's right, like you can put a trailer on blocks and it actually, then it's the same foundation as a cabin. So you can't meet the definition there.
Right.
like, I've been in mobile homes where there's the full basement,
And I think,
and I
I think you might have. to-
and I was looking at, because I thought, like, for vacant lands, that might be a good opportunity for a young couple for their first home if they bought a piece of property and they put what I think as a mobile home being a double wide unit in accordance with the building code and constructed to CSA standards, et cetera. And I've seen that in other townships that allow mobile homes. So I'm not sure if our township is saying not a mobile home, because we do have some in the township, as you acknowledged.
I think Cam made a good point.
So I guess we have to determine if. So I guess have to determine is standards and building code, is it something that you would allow someone to put on their property as their residence?
Yeah, I think that'll come about when we get the definition and making sure that there's no conflict with the other piece, but I think Cam made a pretty good point of, you know, when you start getting into a mobile home like Gina's defining, it's connected to proper sewer, it's got a well, it's got all of that versus, you know, and maybe it's like there's something in those definitions as well, so.
I think you would have to be careful about the footage, the square footage of the trailer, because now they have those square ones.
Yeah, tiny
That-
homes.
tiny homes.
Almost like a house that they're moving down the road, like they have the roof like that and.
Our zoning bylaw says what the minimum requirement is, so that wouldn't meet the minimum requirements of a dwelling for our zoning bylaws.
And what's the minimum requirement?
800.
800?
806.
I was gonna say
7,
2, but yeah, it might be,
and 400 for a seasonal.
So tiny homes not defined in our,
It's not permitted.
it's not permitted.
Not permitted, not permitted. I don't even know that, so the Ontario Building Code, and this goes back and forth depending on who you speak to, but the Ontario Building Code has provisions for a tiny home, but they don't have those standards set up for the tiny home. So they say, yes, they're permitted, but then they don't actually assign anything to it, so it's still a catch-22 for a lot of municipalities where, okay, you're permitted, but I don't know the rules for it, so I can't permit it because I don't know if you meet.
Like for
So
instance,
tiny
it
homes are
needs
not-
2 doors to get out for a fire escape.
Yeah,
Well, they can't do that with a tiny home because they're living above the door.
Yeah.
Mm.
you can't get, yeah, so.
And the conversation around the trailers, I don't know if I'm not familiar with what's the rule right now? Like it says right here, no human habitation in human habitation is not permitted within trailers.
Yeah, that's what I wondered what that was as well.
So it's basically a very general statement, like. There are people that use their trailers on their lots to have family over on weekends or whatnot, and so what does that mean? For them, if this goes forward?
Yeah, and I think that's my question in here, is like, people do use it for guests. So right now, our bylaws do not allow for trailers to be on any vacant land. You can have a trailer, and like just store it on your property. You have a house, you can put a trailer, store it on your property. Open it up when you have an overflow of guests, and then they can stay in there for a maximum number of nights. And then they can, but other than that, no trailers are allowed to be used
On your own property,
on your own property.
why is that?
Vacant land.
You can have a trailer also if you have an active building permit. But
Right.
you've signed an agreement to say that your permit is issued on this date, 18 months from now, your house will be built and the trailer will be removed. Because trailers typically are not connected to a water system or a septic. So what do they do with that stuff? And there's no provisions that we require them to do with it, so. If they're just dumping it on their land, that is not environmentally appropriate.
No, but I feel like, Crown Land allows for camping up to 21 days and, if there's a latrine or a porta potty on site, would that, like, it's a pretty, no trailers on site.
That's in their zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
There's a specific, it's in our zoning bylaw and there's a specific bylaw just for trailers.
Which is, the municipality moved forward with some enforcement. There's actually 3 active lawsuits. The individual sued the municipality and it's going to court to test the bylaw, which has been in existence for a long time. But I can tell you as a municipal view, collecting taxes on a vacant piece of property that has a trailer on it is not sustainable from a municipal standpoint, right? Like you're gonna want your lots developed. So that the assessment growth happens and that. So there's a fine balance between like taking a prime piece of waterfront and putting a trailer on it, and just not developing it. Really short. If somebody is out on Grand Desert and has 100 acres of hunting property and they want a trailer on there, do I really care? No, it's still not permitted. But from in my head, there, like, of course, there's reasonability there, but that, like, our bylaws are bylaw, right? So
this is an old bylaw.
And it's one that many municipalities have struggled with over the last several years. It's been in the news quite often where other municipalities are like, how do we deal with trailers? Because when there's someone in the trailer, they're still using the services that the township provides, or the taxes don't really meet the services. So it's been a lot of conversation amongst many municipalities on what are they doing with their trailers and camping and RVs and modular homes and.
So also a lot to talk through here about making sure that the municipality is approving things that fit within the neighborhood. Well, if you have $1 million home on Lake Nosbonsing and your neighbor's in a trailer that's 25 years old or 30 years old, or 2 years old, quite frankly, like it's just not fitting the neighborhood, right?